Hi, and thanks for tuning in to the Morningside School of Music YouTube channel. Today I'm going to teach you how to read sheet music. I'm going to prove to you that it's not actually that difficult to do. You might have lots of questions like, what is a treble clef? Where can I find a stave? And how do I know what the bass clef looks like? Don't worry, by the end of this video you'll know the answer to all of these things. But before we go any further, please hit that subscribe button and give us a like. And if you've any questions to do with music theory, leave the question below. One of our dedicated music teachers will be more than happy to answer it for you. Now we've got a quick question for you. We're curious, what age were you when you started learning to read sheet music? Maybe you're learning for the first time right now. Put your answer in the comments below. So now on to the good stuff. We're going to start off by looking at the bracket at the side. There's actually two brackets, one on the upper half, one on the bottom half. These are called braces. A symbol that looks like an archer's bow that is used to connect two or more different staves in music notation. The brace will typically provide a visual connection between the dependent parts such as bass clef, which is on the left hand, and the treble clef, which is on the right hand. Moving on now, we have the staves. There is two staves on the screen in front of you. There is one up the top and one down the bottom. To give you a description of the stave, it's sometimes called a staff, and it's a set of 5 equidistant horizontal lines used to clearly communicate musical notation. Note symbols, dynamics, and other performance directions are placed within, above, and below the stave. Now, on the top stave, we have a thing called the treble clef at the start. And just to give you a quick breakdown of the treble clef, it's sometimes referred to as the G clef, but it's more commonly known as the treble clef. And it's a symbol located at the beginning of a stave to indicate the pitches of the notes placed on the lines and spaces. These go from E on the lowest line to F on the highest line, although this can be expanded by adding additional lines, which are known as ledger lines, which we're going to go on and talk about. Now, in the musical alphabet, we have the letters A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. That's excluding sharps and flats. What we're going to do just now is we're going to look at where these notes are positioned on the staves so that we know what notes to press on our instrument. On the treble clef, which is the top stave, we're going to look between the lines on the spaces. Now, moving from the bottom to the top, we have the bottom one is F, the next one up is A, the next one after that is C, then we have E. Now this very conveniently spells out the word face. So what we have to remember is, if you see a space, think of face. So we're counting from the bottom upwards, F, A, C, E. Let's go ahead now and put some notes on our stave. Bearing in mind, if we see a space, we must think of face. So we'll put a note on the bottom space, and that's going to be an F. If we put a note on the top space, that's going to be an E. And if we put a note on the second bottom space, that is going to be an A. Okay, so that explains the spaces on the treble clef, but what about on the lines? Well, let's talk about that right now. So on the bottom line, we have E, the next line is G, moving up we have B, moving up again we have a D, and last but not least, on the top line we have an F. Now, unfortunately that doesn't spell out any nice easy words for us. However, we can say a little phrase which helps us memorise these. So we have E, G, B, D and F, which spells out every good boy deserves fun. So let's go ahead and put some notes on the lines of the treble clef. And the bottom one we have is E. If we put a note on the second top line of the treble clef, that is D. And if we put a note on the middle line of the treble clef, that is B. Keeping in mind that from the bottom to the top spells out every good boy deserves fun, or E, G, B, D and F. What about the left hand, or the bass clef? That's the stave that's at the bottom. Well, we're going to talk about the spaces first of all. And on the bottom space we have A. The next space up we have C. Moving up again we have E. And moving up one last time we have G. And again, that doesn't spell out a word either. So what we use is all cows eat grass. Going from the bottom upwards, all cows eat grass. Let's look at where we can put some notes on the bass clef, on the bottom stave. So the first note I'm going to put on is A. The next one, that's up the top, that's G. And the next one is the second bottom space, and that is C. Moving from the bottom upwards on the bass clef, that's the bottom stave. The very bottom line we have G, then we have B, D, F, and then A. And what we use to help us memorise this is great bikes don't fall apart. So from going from the bottom, great bikes don't fall apart. So to give you an example, if I put a note on the bottom line, that's going to be G. If I put a note on the top line, that's going to be A. And if I put a note on the second bottom line, that is going to be B. Now the next thing we're going to talk about, that I'm not going to go into a great amount of detail about because this is just the basics, are ledger lines. Now ledger lines are just continuations of a stave or a staff. It's just where you can add an extra line if you want to continue down the way or up the way. So to give you an example, this is what a ledger line looks like, and a little description of a ledger line is a short line that represents the continuation of a clef. That could either be the treble or the bass clef, either above or below the stave. Probably the most common use of a ledger line is in between the treble clef and the bass clef, and on that we have middle C. And the reason this is middle C is because it is just underneath D, which is underneath E from Every Good Boy Deserves Fun. Now if we go back to middle C and we move down one, that is B. And the reason that is B is, well, first of all, it's underneath middle C, but it's also, if we think of the lines on the bass clef, good bikes don't fall apart, then right after part A, we're going to have B. So it's just a continuation. The bass clef is a continuation of notes that leads all the way right up through middle C, right up into the treble clef. It's one continuous selection of notes. Okay, let's try some examples. So, what do you think this note is? It's between a space on the treble clef. So we're going to think about face. That's a little tip. If you guessed A, you got it correct. Now we're moving on to the left hand, and we're on a line. So this is where we have to think of great bikes don't fall apart. If you guessed D, you got it correct. Moving back up to treble clef, this time we're on a line, and what we have to remember here is every good boy deserves fun. If you guessed B, you got it correct. And we're still on the treble clef, this time we're on a space. On a space, think of face. That's right, if you guessed F, you got it correct. Last but not least, we'll jump onto the left hand, the bass clef this time. And we're on a line. So we've got to think of great bikes don't fall apart. And if you guessed D, you got it correct. How did you do? Did you manage to get them all correct? Add your answer to the comments, let us know how you got on. Thanks again for watching this sheet music video made by Morningside School of Music in Edinburgh. Remember, if you have any questions at all, please feel free to ask them in the comments below and we'll be more than happy to help. And if you get a second, hit that subscribe button, which helps us make even more videos for you guys.